Most of us see ancient Greek philosopher Plato as the calm, rational father of Western philosophy, a pillar of wisdom, logic, and idealism. But what if the real Plato believed in divine voices, warned that writing would destroy memory, suggested shared wives and children, and feared that freedom leads to slavery? Through his own words, you're about to meet a Plato you've never seen before.
This sign I have had ever since I was a child. The sign is a voice which comes to me and always forbids me to do something.
Wait, a mysterious voice? This sounds less like a calm philosopher and more like someone claiming a private supernatural guide. Plato is famous for logic and reason, so hearing about an inner voice feels strange, even unsettling. Was the father of philosophy listening to whispers? But here's the twist. Plato, through his written work, The Apology, puts these words in the mouth of his teacher, Socrates, during his defense at his trial in Athens. The voice is not a spirit giving commands. It never tells Socrates what to do. It only stops him, like a warning bell. Socrates calls it his daimonion, a divine sign. And crucially, Socrates uses this inner voice as part of his legal defense. He tells the jury that the voice repeatedly prevented him from entering politics. Had he done so, he argues, he would have been destroyed long ago, just like other honest men who challenged power. The voice, paradoxically, protected Athens from Socrates, and Socrates from Athens. This shows a side of Plato that surprises modern readers. He did not believe reason and spirituality were enemies. For him, true wisdom included knowing when not to act. The divine sign represents moral restraint, not irrational impulse. And this idea did not come out of nowhere.
Madness, as the gift of heaven, is the channel by which we receive the greatest blessings.
Greek spirituality was filled with divine voices, signs, and possessions. The most famous example was the Oracle of Delphi, where the Pythia, believed to be inspired by Apollo, spoke prophetic words while in a trance. Poets were said to be seized by the muses. Generals consulted omens. Philosophers spoke of divine madness. Plato inherited a culture where hearing a divine voice was not insanity. It was often a mark of closeness to the gods. That spiritual background deeply shaped how he understood reason, conscience, and philosophy itself. Plato wants us to see that philosophy is not only cold logic, it is also divine connected conscience.
And my father and family are angry with me for prosecuting my father.
What? Plato takes his own father to court for murder and thinks he's right? This sounds shocking even today. In ancient Greece, it was almost unthinkable. Family loyalty was sacred. But don't worry, Plato didn't prosecute his own father. He presents this moment in another Socratic dialogue, set just weeks before Socrates' trial. Outside an Athenian courthouse, Socrates encounters a man named Euther, and he is the one bragging about prosecuting his own father for murder. So, Euther is absolutely confident. He claims to understand piety so well that he knows the gods approve of his actions, even if everyone else, including his family, thinks he's gone too far. That confidence is exactly what fascinates Socrates. Plato uses this disturbing case to make us uncomfortable. Is following the law always the same as being just? Can religious certainty override human compassion? Through Euthyphro, Plato exposes the danger of moral arrogance, of mistaking confidence for wisdom. At the same time, Plato is not defending lawlessness. Quite the opposite. He believed deeply that just laws, applied equally to everyone, were essential to a healthy and effective government. No one, not even family members, should be above the law. The real problem is not legal equality, but believing you fully understand divine justice when you don't. The dialogue leaves us hanging on purpose. Plato forces us to sit with an uncomfortable question. What if being absolutely sure you're righteous is the greatest moral failure of all? The quote reveals Plato's deep concern. Righteousness without humility can become cruelty.
If men learn this, it will implant forgetfulness in their souls. They will cease to exercise memory because they rely on that which is written.
This is deeply ironic. A philosopher warning us not to trust writing. Inside a written book, Plato helped shape Western education, yet here he sounds like an enemy of books. To explain this, Plato tells a myth where he puts this quote in the mouth of one of his heroes. In the Egyptian city of Naucratis, there lived an ancient god named Theith, inventor of many arts: arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, games of strategy, and above all, letters. Proud of his inventions, Theith brought them before King Thamus, ruler of all Egypt, who dwelled in Thebes. One by one, Theith presented his arts, and Thamus judged them, praising some, criticizing others. When they reached writing, Theith declared that letters would make people wiser and improve their memory. But Themis replied with a devastating critique. Writing, he warned, would do the opposite of what Theith promised. It would create forgetfulness, not memory. People would rely on written marks instead of their own minds. They would gain not wisdom, but the appearance of wisdom, knowing many things without truly understanding any of them. This myth reveals Plato's deepest concern: passive learning. Writing, he feared, could not answer questions, defend itself, or adapt to the soul of the reader. A written text is silent. Once released, it cannot explain itself. That fear explains why all of Plato's works are dialogues. This was no stylistic accident. Plato believed that true philosophy happens through live exchange, through questioning, challenge, and response. Written logos cannot defend itself, but spoken logos can. Written dialogue was Plato's closest approximation to living conversation. Even so, Plato knew such dialogue was still imperfect, because it remained written. For him, the highest form of philosophy was oral. Thought itself, he believed, was a dialogue, a conversation of the soul with itself. Philosophy for Plato was not information. It was an active, living process. Overall, this quote shows Plato as a critic of technology, long before screens, long before the internet. It's not that Plato hated writing. He feared that without critical thinking, writing could make minds lazy. How about we turn this video into a dialogue? Leave your thoughts in the comment section about this quote, or challenge another one.
Excess of liberty seems only to pass into excess of slavery.
This sounds almost backwards. How can too much freedom lead to slavery? Plato is often portrayed as hostile to democracy, but this warning comes from lived experience, not abstract theory. Plato grew up during the Peloponnesian War, a brutal conflict between Athens and Sparta that lasted for almost 30 years. Athens, the proud democratic power, was ultimately defeated. The loss shattered its confidence and destabilized its political system. After the war, democracy collapsed. In its place arose the 30 tyrants, an oligarchic regime backed by Sparta. They ruled through fear, executions, and property seizures. The tyranny lasted less than a year, but it left deep scars. Democracy restored, and even then, it was more fragile, more suspicious, and more volatile than before. Plato watched all of this unfold. He saw how radical freedom dissolved into chaos, and how chaos made people desperate for order, any order. In the Republic, one of his primary works, Plato maps out a cycle of political decay. Democracy, when pushed to excess, breeds disorder. Disorder creates fear. Fear opens the door to tyranny.
And so tyranny naturally arises out of democracy.
Plato's iconic book, The Republic, where this quote comes from, is not just a book about an ideal city. It is a diagnosis of political collapse. Plato is warning that freedom without discipline destroys itself, and that societies often trade liberty for security when things fall apart.
How then may we devise just one royal lie, which may deceive the rulers, if that be possible, and at any rate the rest of the city?
A philosopher proposing a lie for society? This is one of Plato's most unsettling moments. Plato is supposed to love truth, the pillar of his philosophy, so why is he planning deception? In his famous The Republic, Plato openly plans what amounts to state propaganda, a civic medicine meant to preserve unity. He even suggests that this lie might have to deceive not only the citizens, but the rulers themselves. It sounds eerily like modern authoritarian public relations, except Plato frames it as a moral necessity. The so-called noble lie is a founding myth. Citizens are told they were born from the earth itself and mixed with different metals in their souls, explaining their social rules. The goal is stability, loyalty, and harmony, not individual fulfillment. And that's the key. For Plato, the happiness of the individual is less important than the happiness and stability of the state as a whole. A well-ordered city matters more than personal freedom or personal truth. This is why the idea remains so controversial. Plato is willing to sacrifice individual autonomy for collective order.
The best men should mate with the best women, the lottery secretly rigged.
Plato forces us to ask, is social harmony worth a lie? Or does this idea open the door to abuse? This quote is one of the most controversial in all of philosophy. He believed that truth alone might not hold a society together. Sometimes he thought people need a story to believe in.
Drinking to the point of drunkenness is not appropriate anywhere except at the festivals.
Plato, the strict moralist, allowing drunkenness? It feels almost scandalous. But in ancient Greece, festivals were not just parties, they were sacred institutions. Certain gods, especially Dionysus, were associated with wine, ecstasy, and the temporary breakdown of social order. During festivals like the Dionysia and Anthesteria, people drank heavily, sang obscene songs, wore masks, and overturned everyday norms. These festivals served a psychological and social function. They allowed citizens to release tension, confront chaos in a controlled setting, and then return to order renewed. Plato recognized this. In Laws, written late in his life, he argues that wine can be educational. It tests self-control by loosening it. This is an older, more pragmatic Plato. He no longer imagines perfect, rational citizens. Instead, he designs laws for real human beings, creatures who need rhythm, release, and ritual. Even excess, when properly contained, has its place.
All wives and children were to be in common, to the intent that no one should ever know his own child.
Hold on, Plato wanted what? In this calm, almost casual line, Plato proposes something that feels shocking even today. Abolish the nuclear family, no private households, not knowing your own children. And the strangest part? Socrates treats it like a simple administrative rule, practical, tidy, and obviously reasonable. This idea appears in Timaeus, where Plato briefly restates features of his ideal city. There is no outrage in the tone, no apology. The family, as most people understand it, is quietly removed. Why? Because Plato believed that private families create private loyalties, and private loyalties, he feared, tear cities apart. Plato's argument is not about cruelty, it is about unity. He believed that people fight, cheat, and bend the law because they protect their own children, their own blood, their own household. If no one knows which children are biologically theirs, then no one can favor them. The city becomes the family. Justice becomes impartial. Everyone belongs to everyone. To Plato, this was not heartless. It was the ultimate cure for division. If citizens stop thinking in terms of mine, they start thinking in terms of ours. This is the emotional core of Plato's idea. He asks citizens to reimagine kinship itself. Age, not blood, defines family. Everyone your age is your sibling. The older are your parents. The younger are your children. It is a total rewrite of human relationships. And now, what you are about to hear is even more upside down.
The offspring of the inferior, who are born defective, they will properly dispose of in secret, so that no one will know what has become of them.
This is where many scholars suspect the shadow of Sparta. Spartan society was infamous for subordinating family to the state. Children were inspected at birth, and those judged weak were left out in the wilderness. Whether exaggerated or not, this image of ruthless discipline dominated the Greek imagination. Sparta had also defeated Athens in the Peloponnesian War, while Plato watched his own city descend into chaos, execution, and tyranny. It is not unreasonable to speculate that Plato, searching for the source of political strength, looked with grim respect at the society that won. Together, these two proposals, shared families and secret elimination, reveal Plato at his most extreme. Love becomes abstract, parenthood becomes political, and the individual life matters only insofar as it serves the harmony of the city. Would you like to live in this ideal society devised by philosophy? Thanks so much for watching. If this changed how you see Plato, like the video and subscribe for more deep dives like this. And if you want another perspective-shattering story, watch the next video on your screen now.